Welcome to the Fantasy Fangirls Podcast, where two sisters dive deep into beloved fantasy lore, characters, themes, theories, and more. Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode, where we're covering chapters 6 through 12 of A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. But before we dive into this episode, please listen closely to our content warning. While we're focusing our discussion on chapters 6 through 12 and book 1, we are going to bring in themes, foreshadowing, lore, and other insights from across the series. So yes, these episodes are spoiler central for the whole ACOTAR series. These deep dives do not, however, have spoilers for the rest of Sarah J. Maas's series, except at the end of some episodes, including a short and sweet one this episode, where we include our Maas vs. Madness segment. We'll give a big old spoiler warning beforehand, so if you haven't read the Maas verse, you can leave the episode right there, no worries at all, or you can keep listening for Throne of Glass and /or Crescent City crossover callouts. If you haven't already, we highly recommend you quickly give a listen to our intro episode where we explain in detail how spoilers work for these deep dives. We even have our spoiler explanation near the top of the episode to make it extra fast.
So with all of that said, if you don't know why my reactive ass would have died instantly with the bogey, go finish the series and then come back and listen when you're done.
Next, we at Fantasy Fangirls are adults who say adult things about adult books. In other words, this podcast is rated R, friends.
Feyre begins to notice Timitam's body during this stretch of chapters, and I will unabashedly point out every single instance. So please be mindful of little listening ears.
Last thing before we jump into our ACOTAR episode 2. If you already know you love Fantasy Fangirls, if you're super excited for this ACOTAR journey we're embarking on together, if you want more content, more community, more events, and early access to ad-free episodes, please check out our Patreon.
We have 2 membership tiers that you can join. Number 1, the Valkyries, which includes access to our Boppin' Discord, live Q&As with Lexi and I, access to our book club, and 20% off merch. All of this is for $5 a month. Or you can join the High Fae, which includes everything from Valkyrie level, plus early access to ad-free episodes, our full episode outlines. Yes, these 35, 50-page ones, you get all of them. Special voting privileges on things like merch designs, sip and tea with the Suriel topics, and more. We just did our fan cast for Fourth Wing poll this last week. It was awesome. The High Fae is for $10 a month. Basically, our Patreon is amazing. It's filled with the best people in the entire world, and I will die on that hill.
Join the party at patreon.com/fantasyfangirls. The link is also in the show notes or YouTube caption, depending where you're tuning in right now. And really and truly, thank you so much for your support.
And now, it is time to basically spend half of our episode in the Spring Court dining room.
Woohoo!
Yeah! Food!
Don't worry, we will make this
room
exciting, you all. Nicole's going to open up this discussion, as always, with a summary of what happens in chapters 6 through 12. So gather around, friends. We need an Inner Circle Debrief.
Chapter 6. We arrive in the Spring Court, and this place is nice. The man-bear pig leads Feyre into the dining room, which is laden with food, and with a burst of light, the man-bear pig turns into a man. Oh, a handsome blonde man with a golden mask indeed. Moments later, another man walks in with red hair, golden eye, and a fox mask. Thinking that these masks are basically the Spring Court trend equivalent to a Stanley, Feyre is annoyed at the red-haired fairy who is just being a dick and a half. Lucian, we learn, is his name, and he's shooketh that a mortal girl killed Andress. Then a woman with a bird mask, Alice, what is this, Phantom of the Opera, comes in to whisk our girl away to get cleaned up in her room. But as she leaves the dining room, she hears the red-haired fairy mention how they should just dump the mortal girl somewhere and heck, maybe even kill her. Don't worry, everyone. Somehow this douche canoe ends up one of the best characters in this entire book. Alice takes Feyre up to her new room and cleans her, plucks her, cuts her hair, and attempts to dress her in a gown. But Feyre refuses and gets herself a set of tunic and pants. Chapter 7, back in the dining room. Get used to me saying this, everyone, because I'll say it a lot in this episode. Feyre sits down with these 2 males and a plethora of even more food. Feyre still refuses to eat, though, having heard stories of fairy food being lethal to humans, making them enslaved to the High Fae. We learn that the golden-haired High Fae's name is Tamlin, or Timitam, as he will be known by this podcaster. And don't worry, humans, he's got some moves up his sleeve. You look better than before, and your hair is clean. What a stud muffin our Timmy Tam! Feyre begins to inquire about her new life now that she's in Prythian, and Tam makes it very clear that she's free to go wherever she wants. Be careful what you wish for, Timmy Tam. When Feyre starts to ask about the state of her family, Tamlin makes one thing very clear. Your family is alive and well cared for, but subject over. Finally, Timmy Tam, seeing that Feyre will literally collapse if she doesn't eat anything soon, uses magic to strap her in a chair, hot, and piles food on her plate and forces her to eat. This food is so good, filled with spices that I will devote longer than you think I will to today's podcast. After Feyre is full to bursting, Lucien and Tamlin begin to ask about her love life, and Feyre is aghast. Do these two high fae males really have nothing better to do than talk to her about her love life? She's read about the Bechdel test. She confirms that she had a man back home, but she did not love him, to which these two powerful high fae males go like, oh my god! Finally, Feyre, abso-fucking-lutely done with these two, leaves the room. The next morning, Feyre caught an Alice, but despite being pissed about the lovely curtains that were used as a rigging system, Alice is slightly impressed with Feyre's abilities. It's time for day 2 in the spring court, and Feyre leaves her room to roam the grounds, finding a painting that literally takes her breath away. Oh, what I would give to see this girl stroll about the Met. But Timmy Tam sneaks up on her with a, "You, way to woo a woman, Tamlin." He asks her if she wants a tour of the grounds, but she treats him like a frat boy at the bar and says, no thank you. However, she does glean a little bit of info from our Tamlin, asking why Andros was in the forest in the human realm to begin with. He tells her that there's a sickness in these lands and has been for 50 years. I guess that's important. Timmy Tam, our little introvert, has had enough human interaction today and dismisses her with a, "I'll see you at dinner." Chapter 8, Feyre uses the afternoon to get associated with the spring court, exploring the grounds, getting her escape plan in place. But after hearing some twinkling feet in the background, shouts to our Mass vs. Madness section today, everyone, Alice calls Feyre to lunch. Smash cut to that evening at dinner in the dining room. Feyre steals a knife from the table, but these curious fae keep getting curiouser, asking about her age, what are her hobbies, and more about her family. And of course, is your mother dead? Good job, guys. But Feyre, insulted by these two seemingly jackass fairies, leaves the dining room. Don't worry, Feyre, darling, you will be back soon. Chapter 9. The following morning, Feyre runs into Timmy Tam, where he makes a surprising effort to ask Feyre to ride across the grounds. But Feyre epically turns him down again. Our girl has plans for the day. She seeks out Lucien at the stables and goes for a ride with him. While on their ride, Lucien sees through Feyre's plan instantly. Not quite so stealthy yet, Feyre darling. But then out of nowhere, Lucien's like, shut up! Because a chill has hit the air. Chapter 10. Suddenly, an ancient, hollow voice takes over Feyre's mind. "I will grind your bones between my claws. Look at me." Kinky, but not Feyre's Suriel cup of tea. Willing herself to not look at this terrifying, slightly self-absorbent with all its look at me bullshit creature, Lucien, showing his fear, admits that the bogey should not be in these lands and they need to return to the estate now. But where in the estate do they go to? To the dining room, of course! Meeting up with a jealous and pissed Tamlin. Lucien admits that they were hunting and they ran into the bogey. Tamlin's jealousy is going to have to be put off till later because he's instantly on his feet and storming out. Time for a bogey hunt. Later that night, Feyre is waiting by her window. Not for Tamlin to come home, though. No way, not at all. But she looks out her window, and who is standing there but Papa Archeron. Chapter 11, we're saved! Packing up her bags in an instant, Feyre readies herself to leave for her father, who she's shocked came to her rescue. She runs down the stairs past the seemingly empty hallways and is seconds away from getting to meet up with her father. But then hands grab her shoulders. It's Timmy Tam! But he's got some bad news, and unfortunately not so surprising news. That is not your father. Where her father once stood is suddenly a bag, then a bow and arrow, then her cowering sisters. This deadly creature number 2, the puka, is ready to lure her away to a remote place and then eat you slowly. Again, hot. But an angry Feyre fights back to Timmy Tam, saying that of course she wanted to go with the puka, that's totally not at all Papa Archeron. But Tamlin again reminds her, your family is cared for. And this time, it actually sinks in. Feyre realizes that her vow to her mother is fulfilled. Montage! Over the next few days, Feyre adjusts to the realization that she is truly meant to, Grandma from Mulan voice, stay here forever? She spends her days hunting with Lucien while Tamlin, as Manbear Pig, goes bogey hunting. That night, Feyre wakes up from a dream where she's being chased chased by a shadow daddy and kills a high fae whose blood is running down her hands. Ha! I'm sure that means nothing, but with a chill that has nothing to do with the everlasting spring air, Feyre gets up from her bed. Chapter 12. Disturbed from her dream, she begins to illiterately write out a map of the manor. But who's standing in the breezy hallway but Man-Bear-Pig? And he's looking rough. But with a flash of light, he changes into his high fae form. Feyre asks if he killed the bogey, and Tamlin confirms. Also looking at Feyre's map, realizing that she cannot write. But Feyre inquires about a place to patch him up. I mean, he's literally dripping blood on the floor, and Timmy Tam is asking about maps. This is not the last time I will be questioning Tamlin's priorities. Feyre takes him to the small infirmary and begins the cleaning process and starts to realize two things. Number one, Tamlin is way more powerful than she thought. And number two, they're not so different. Always caring for others and no one ever taking care of them. Enter the heated moment. But with a, "You're not what I expected," for a human, he walks out. "You're welcome" would have worked too, Tam. The next day, Feyre walks past fighting Tamlin and Lucien in the dining room. Lucien is accusing Tamlin of not doing anything but sulking and glowering, and for someone who has a heart of stone, he seems to be a big old softy. Tamlin threatens Lucien to stop pushing him, but suddenly with a soft thump on the door, they realize just now Feyre has been listening. Feyre asks Lucien to go on a ride, but wingman Lucien is like, "I can't, but you know who can?" Feyre, horrified at the idea of spending the day with Tamlin, honestly, it's shocking these two have any kind of love story, tells Tamlin she hates hunting, and Tamlin asks her, "Then what do you want to do?" These two walk down the hallway, and finally, Tamlin thanks her for helping the night prior. But then, with a twist of Feyre's stomach, he opens the door to her place of choice for the day, the study.
Yay! Thank you, Nicole, so much for that Inner Circle Debrief. That was a long one. We are covering a lot of chapters. Again, a lot happens in the dining room.
A lot happens in the dining room. And when I say it's a lot happens in these chapters, but it's also not a lot. That was the hardest Inner Circle Debrief or battle brief I've ever written in my life.
Hey, now's a great time to let our lovely listeners know that this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Feyre is suddenly realizing that she has nothing but time with her new life in the spring court. But many of us spend our days wishing we had even just an extra hour in the day. Oh my gosh, I sure do. But when that extra hour comes around, it can feel daunting. Do I read? Do I clean? Do I hunt with Lucien? Do I look at art? Do I practice writing? There's so many overwhelming options. The best way to squeeze in something special into your schedule is to first know what is most important to you and you make it a priority. Therapy can help you discover what matters to you in your life so you can do more of it.
I will never forget the therapy session that I had right after beginning my ACOTAR read, actually. And I told my therapist that basically, I was doing something that made me truly happy and more alive than I ever felt before, ever. We basically spent the entire call celebrating and talking about why doing things simply for leisure's sake and not trying to be productive all the time, I'm not guilty of that, no, not at all, was so important. And this therapy session was one that I will never forget. It literally changed the trajectory of my life. She and I talked about how a lot of the times when we do things that are leisurely, we can feel really guilty. And she helped me reprogram all the things up there and just... It's awesome. And also my therapist, shouts to you, Taylor, is now reading the entire Maas first. She's actually done with the entire Maas first now. So that's been really fun to talk to her about.
If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge.
Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/FFG today and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/FFG.
All right, Nicole, it is time to step into the cauldron and discuss key insights, foreshadowing theories, and so much more. Right off the bat, this eternal spring is throwing Feyre off. She might prefer spring to winter for obvious survival reasons, but she's ultimately a seasons gal. Hey, me too, girl. That's why I live in Colorado. This passage here is such a great nod to her eventual switch to a solar court. What wretched power did they possess to make their lands so different from ours, to control the seasons and weather as if they owned them? And she starts preparing to bolt back to the wall and back to her family because now's her chance. But she's been knocked out for 2 days, which means no food, and dang, she's sore from all that traveling. And hey, our girl Feyre, she is a survivor who recognizes what her body needs, which is food and rest. course, she still won't eat for a while because she's scared the food is poisoned, but that's beside the point right now.
I can't blame her too much for that, really.
I can't either, but it's also like, you need to eat.
You do need to eat.
She needs to think long-term. Anyway.
We get there, luckily, thanks to bondage. The first of many dining room scenes. Let's jump into it. I love these descriptions of Tamlin's manor. There's the white and black checkered marble flooring, countless doors, the sweeping staircase, a long hall with giant glass doors that leads out to a larger garden. Feyre is shocked, yes, because of the wealth on display here. She is so not used to this, especially, even with her growing up, this is insanely more wealthy. But it's also because she's, quote, never contemplated that the fairies, these feral monsters, might own estates. She also notices how normal and familiar the food is. The last episode, Lexi and I talked about this whole us versus them thing. And now Feyre really starts to blend these two together and realize that maybe these monstrous people, or at least their lifestyle, aren't so different from what she's used to. Does not mean she's trusting them yet, though.
Yep, because she's understandably convinced that she can't eat this food. Again, fairies are dangerous has been drilled into her for her whole life. As children, they're taught through songs and chants to never eat fairy food or drink their wine, or you'll become enslaved to them in mind and soul. I'm thinking the High Lords of Prythian could have taken this advice at Amaranth's party all those years ago.
That's a really good fucking point.
Saying, yeah.
But then with a flash of white light, the man-bear pig, not so Kool-Aid man, turns into a golden-haired man with a golden mask. Welcome to the chat, Timid Tam.
Gasp! He's a high fae! Oh no! A handsome warrior high fae! Oh no!
Who then proceeds to fill a glass of wine and chug it, quote, as if he needed it. This line really stood out to me this read. Is it because he needs some liquid courage? Is it because he just truly does not know what to do next? Last episode, we talked about how he never really thought ahead to step 2. He never really considered that, and I'll go into that way later.
Oh, we have so much to say about Tamlin this episode.
Oh yeah, this is a big character analysis Tamlin episode. Or is it because he now has a dirty human girl in his house who hates him and he's pissed off that he has to woo her? And he's like, gah, today's been a day.
I think I'm going to go with all of the above. He has had quite a few days here.
God, that's true. And then Lucien, sweet, wonderful Lucien, walks into the dining room. And I just love this difference here because I love seeing the differences between how Lucien walks in and addresses his High Lord versus how Cassian, Azriel, and Amren are introduced in ACOMAF.
There are so many stark differences between the Spring Court and the Night Court that we'll continually point out, but this is subtly a really big one. How the High Lord interacts with his inner circle and how they all work together as a unit. Tamlin and Lucien may be friends, and in some ways, they're all each other really has, but it's still very much a formal relationship. Lucien is in Tamlin's employment, and Tamlin makes sure he remembers that on multiple occasions in this book and throughout the whole series here.
Because Lucien walks in and immediately bows, versus the Spring Court, who walk in and bang on the door telling Rhys to open up. We also notice that Lucien has a fox mask with a golden eye. We know from ACOTAR, quote, this eye, it can see things that others can't. Spells, glamours, etc.
I always assume his eye is like Mad Eye Moody's with the little hints that we get of his eye's magical abilities, how it can see things that others can't. I think that, once when we get to ACOTAR, we'll definitely do a whole analysis on if he is able to see past some of Farrah's glamour. We'll definitely get to that. But hey, Mad Eye Lucien, everybody. That's all I can think of here.
Mad Eye Lucien. I love that. Then, as Tamlin explains to Lucien that this mortal girl killed Andrus with an ash arrow, Lucien says, quote, a mortal girl actually killed Andrus. I love this moment on a reread because on the first read, you're like, oh, he's just surprised because a mortal girl killed a fairy and that's supposed to be really hard. But on a reread, you know that he's in disbelief because holy shit, the cure to the curse is actually coming true and he just can't believe it. Now, I do have some wingman advice for Lucien. Lucien, who is begging Tamlin to start sending out sentries again after Tamlin basically gave up for decades, is saying things like, and now we're stuck with that. Now he does say, quote, "Did you enjoy killing my friend human? Did you hesitate, or was it your hatred in your heart riding you too hard to consider sparing him?" This does feel a lot like him confirming over and over, like, is this the girl? Like, is this the girl who is supposed to cure the curse? Making sure that she did actually kill Andrus with true hate in her heart. But also, y'all don't have much time to save the Spring Court, so here's my wild advice to you, Lucian. Maybe try being nice to her if you know you need to bring her to your side.
So while I wholeheartedly agree with you, we do just have to remember that this curse Amarantha placed on Tamlin and his court, it was an insulting result of Tamlin saying he'd rather fall for a human than for Amarantha. And these High Fae, they have prejudices too against the humans, even if they don't support human enslavement. Tamlin and Lucian, they're not happy about bringing a human back to their court. Yes, even though this is what they theoretically want and need to break the curse. But the point of the curse is that in order to break it, Tamlin has to do the unthinkable, something that Amarantha thinks he's incapable of. And not in a let's kill all the humans way, but in a, oh, we have major prejudices against the humans kind of way, thanks to centuries of mistrust and tensions between the two races.
But then Lucian says to Tamlin, quote, "Perhaps there's a way to which Tamlin cuts him off with his name, Lucian, and a behave." What do you think Lucian was about to say?
I think that Lucian, he's been scheming to figure out another way, especially with the deadline coming up so soon. He hasn't given up and accepted their court's fate yet, like Tamlin has. So I think that, he's been scheming. Remember, he's got a fox mask. He has been scheming for a plan B here, and Tamlin is now like, nope, we're going with plan A.
Now, in a bit, he does go on to say that maybe they should just take a stand against Amarantha and dump Feyre, or heck, maybe even kill her. I'm going to go ahead and give Lucian one big L for this episode, because not a good look, my guy.
No, it really isn't. But, and again, I agree with you, but these guys, they have given up, like on, the mortal girl plan A part, even as what they've needed to have come to fruition is actually happening right before them. I wonder if he's worried Feyre, she will be a distraction to Tamlin from his preferred alternative of taking a stand against Amarantha. That's how I understand this first dining room exchange. Tamlin even says they're not to take any other action until they know for certain this way to break the curse, it won't work. Again, plan A. And Lucian's a little bit like, damn it, I've been working on plan B here and it was getting really good and I was excited that you were going to be in on it. And now Tamlin is distracted by plan A again.
I love that. I didn't think about it that way. I was always thinking about it like they're just pissed because she's being a bitch and she's not immediately warming up to them. And let's be real. These are High Fae, specifically Tamlin, especially here. He's used to kind of being weighted on hand and foot and not being challenged very often.
I am going to be talking about that in a little while. Yes, wait. Indeed.
And Lucian even says, this is the hand that the Cauldron dealt us. He's pissed that it's like, this girl, fucking really? Now, I do wonder also if they're judging her extra hard because she is poor. She also looks very poor. She is not bathed. She is not described as pretty at the beginning. We even last episode were like, do you think he wants Elaine instead of Feyre because she's not the girl he thought he would want?
And it's we're joking, but not really joking.
Oh, I'm not joking. I'm dead serious. I think it's absolutely happening. I do wonder, why are they so cruel to her here?
I always read it as they're just pissed off in general. As far as everyone in this dining room is concerned, and all three of them, this is one big lose-lose situation. Especially in these early interactions with Feyre, I feel like Lucian is upset about his friend Andrus and doesn't have confidence that Tamlin will be able to fall in love with this human. Again, it's supposed to be the unthinkable here. I can't say it enough. No one expected this to actually happen. And it's Lucian, he's caught off guard and real-time processing this, as is understandable. I'm not excusing his initial behavior because he's absolutely being an asset to poor Feyre and not looking at the bigger picture, the greater goal. But they have all been through a lot of despair, mistrust, and they hold centuries-long prejudices. Hence, again, the curse in the first place.
When Lucian decides to be a dick, he's a dick the entire time, but at least in a condescending way. Actually, I don't know if that's an at least. That's just a sidestep for our guy Lucian. He says, quote, "Your eyes are like stars." Oh, hello, stars. Many times in this series, Rhys's eyes are regularly described as having starlight in them. I love this moment because it's connecting the two of them, even though Rhys is nowhere near joining our story yet. But then Speaking of people who do join our story, we meet Mrs. Alice, who has a brass bird mask. I love how Tamlin has this very ornate golden mask, and Lucian and Alice have bronze and brass masks. It is further cementing that Tamlin is the one in charge here. He is the High Lord without being stated on the page yet that he is the High Lord. I also love how Alice, who is under a glamour right now to appear more, normal to Feyre's human eye, but we will later learn that she has tree bark skin, which is where birds tend to hang out, in trees.
Oh, interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way. I do love how the servants, they all choose the bird masks because, again, remember back at the party, which definitely we will do a Suriel section on this, but at the party for Amarantha, everyone got to choose their masks, and the servants, they chose bird masks because they're known to talk, chirp, chirp, chirp among each other. So I loved that little nod.
Now, we do need to take a moment to praise the wonderful woman who is Mrs. Potts Alice, because she is the only one who is thinking straight right now. These two asshole high fays are like, maybe we should just dump her in a ditch, meh. But she is telling Feyre things, even though it's in hidden meanings.
She tells Feyre to keep, oh my God. Everyone, I just have to take a real quick pause. So I always pronounced it Farah. And until last episode, the beginning of the episode, Nicole is helping me reprogram my brain to calling it Feyre. So I am so sorry. I am real time reprogramming my brain, Feyre, to keep her wits about her because even her senses will betray her. Whew, I did it there.
I'm so proud
that will
of you.
happen.
Doing so good.
Thank you, everyone, for the encouragement, and I am working on it, and I'm doing my best. All right, back to our story here. Well, Feyre's senses will betray her very soon, but Tamlin will emphasize that Alice told her this. So, did Tamlin tell Alice to onboard Feyre, or did he learn that she just did? Did he just trust that the servants would fill her in, and maybe they're a little bit more, approachable than he is, so he knows that Feyre will listen better to them? I really want to know about the onboarding process here that they all discussed.
Or did he just leave it to other people to do more work so that he didn't have to do it because he's a little bit lazy when it comes to wooing her? I said it, and I'll talk about it more later. The contrast of Lucian being like, let's kill her or dump her somewhere, but Alice is just dribbling information. She knows that Feyre is smart. She knows that she's going to figure it out. Alice is playing the long-term chess game, and I fucking love her for it. Huzzah for Alice. We love you. My only note for Alice here is that she says master instead of High Lord for Tamlin. I'm assuming that's because she knows that if Feyre knew that Timitam was High Lord, she would absolutely freak out because she's heard these insane mortal horror stories around like the High Lords of the Prythian and da-da-da-da-da. So I'm guessing it's more for Feyre's sake than stealthy sake.
I agree. Alice does refer to him as the Lord and Master of the Sentinels later during her epic info dump, but she starts referring to him as Lord Tamlin after Feyre finds out about him being High Lord. So yes, I do think that you are right there that she is conveniently leaving out that information like everybody else is right now.
Speaking of information, I'm going to get into my spices theory. As Feyre is getting dressed in a tunic and trousers from Alice, she recalls her father's office previous to their downfall. She mentions how his office was, quote, full of the scents of exotic spices and the music of foreign tongues, made up the majority of my happy memories. It's time for me to get on my spices bullshit. Here we go. It is interesting to me that Feyre consistently remembers her father and his time as a merchant being connected to the word spices, a word that comes up regularly in Prythian when discussing the food in the Spring Court. Valaris is known for having these super rare and exotic spices. And in Mist and Fury, there's a mention of how there's shipments of spices that are received in Valaris. Even Nesta brings Emery some of those spices in A Court of Silver Flames. And then in A Court of Mist and Fury, chapter 15, Feyre is in Valaris and says, quote, so many spices, scents familiar and forgotten from those precious years when I had known the comfort of an invincible father and bottomless wealth. Here's my theory. I think that Papa Archeron regularly traded with Prythian, specifically Valaris, by getting spices from Valaris to sell throughout the continent, perhaps even Scathia, which we learned in chapter 33 of ACOTAR, lies along the wall to the east and is the smallest among the human queen's realms. But it is rich in trade and arms. This is the realm that Vassa rules over, and yep, you guessed it, that's the queen that Papa Archeron rolls into battle with. Now, I don't think he directly went to Velaris to get these spices. That's the secrecy of the city, no way. He's definitely working with people. But in the above quote that I did, Feyre mentions that people with accents were often in her father's office. We don't know if that means they're from Prythian. However, the fact that she pointed out foreign accents highlights the fact that these visitors were not from where she is in the mortal realm. Also, she mentions that these times in her father's office were her happiest memories. It would not be out of the question for these spices and accented visitors to be from Prythian, a place where she comes into her own and becomes the happiest version of herself. Lexi, mic drop, spice watch.
I love your spice watch so much.
I'm convinced it is so canon in my head that he traded with Prythian and that all these spices are connected. There's even spices mentioned in Tog. There's spices mentioned in CC. Now, maybe SJM just likes the word spices and she enjoys torturing me. But I truly think that, at least in the ACOTAR world, Papa Archeron was regularly trading with Prythian for spices.
I do agree with that. I also would like to point out that spices are a great way of describing food. But I do agree with you here. I do.
I was expecting that's a fun theory from you, but you know what? I'm happy.
I'm not going to do that when you love this so much.
You're great. I like you, older sister. Now, one of the things that I love about this next dining room scene is how much we see Tamlin attune to Feyre's thinking process. Remember, this is Feyre pre-Under the Mountain. She is a different person from pre-Under the Mountain and post-Under the Mountain. And this pre-Under the Mountain version of herself is someone that Tamlin really understands her level of thinking.
I'll agree to the extent that I think he can relate to her survival instincts, but that's kind of where his understanding of her stops, at least at this point here. They're only a few days into everything. He doesn't understand her enough to recognize the importance of outright telling her how he's taking care of her family, for instance. He can't put himself in her shoes as a human terrified of being in Prythian, but he can put himself in her shoes as someone who feels threatened and is willing to fight to escape, which makes absolute sense. That's kind of something that he's able to relate to more himself, right?
That's a great point. The moment I'm specifically referring to here is Lucien asks why Feyre is not wearing a pretty dress. And don't worry, Lucien, your mate loves dresses. Just be patient, my guy. And Tamlin says, quote, because killing us is easier in pants. I love the way that they're setting them up to fall in love. But it's like you're saying, it's through these survival instincts, which is a large portion of who Feyre is right now.
Yes.
There's obviously the part of her who loves art and all this kind of stuff. And Tamlin opens up to that side for sure. One of my favorite things about this book is Tamlin's attempt at flirting and Lucian's like double thumbs up for his friend in How to Train Your Dragon. I think it's like number 2 or 3 even. When Toothless is trying to flirt with a dragon friend, Hiccup like pops up from the bushes and is like, you're doing great, double thumbs up.
It has been so long since I saw How to Train Your Dragon, and so at first I was like, wait, I don't remember the scene. I was like, oh, I think you're talking about the sequel. I don't even know if there's a third one. Is there a third one?
There is a third one, and I cannot believe you have a toothless stuffed animal, Lexi. I cannot believe you haven't seen it.
I guess I haven't.
We'll need to watch it. That's my favorite set of movies ever in my entire life.
I do. I love the first one.
All I can picture here as Tamlin says, quote, you look better than before, and your hair is clean.
Oh, baby. We need a purr in there. Oh, I can't do it. There you go.
And this is my favorite part of this. Quote, I could have sworn Lucien gave Tamlin an encouraging nod. Like he's just trying to be a good wingman at the bar. It's so funny. These males might be centuries old, but this is so reminiscent of that like college bar, frat boys learning how to flirt. Just true chef's kiss moment from SJM.
I can't help but laugh because we went to such different colleges. Like the last thing I think of here is college frat boy. Like that's Reese vibes. Like that is Inner Circle vibes.
What?
Like, here is a boy who's never really talked to a girl and doesn't know how to compliment someone of the opposite sex. And I won't even say flirt. We're literally talking about just giving a compliment to someone. And I went to a totally different college with different frat boys than you did. They had no trouble flirting. I'll just leave it at that.
I went to a tiny ass musical theater college where it was 18 girls to 1 straight male at my school.
And I would also just like to tell everyone that is where Nicole met her husband. They dated for a little while then, and then they broke up, and then they reconnected later on. But you snagged one of them.
I snagged one of them. Oh my gosh. You also know that Tamlin is releasing a sigh of relief because, like we talked about in last episode, we think that he preferred one of the sisters, specifically Elaine, because they were, less dirty because they hadn't been in the woods all day. And now Tamlin's like, oh, thank God she's hot. Oh, thank God. Fucking Tamlin. Also, Fae-vorite does not take the bait, though. Fae-vorite is just trying to get any information that she possibly can. She asks, quote, "Your high fae, fairy nobility?" And Lucian coughs and goes, "You can take that question," to Tamlin. I fucking love Lucian.
Man, I missed book 1 Lucian so much. Just so much.
I know. He really gets done dirty later on in the series.
Oh gosh, I'm gonna definitely step on a pedestal, but we're not there yet. We surprisingly haven't talked much about this yet, but I wanted to bring up some parallels to Beauty and the Beast. Gilbane from our Discord brought up some really great points about these story comparisons, specifically with Tamlin and the Beast. The Beast, like Tamlin, has had little contact with others, pretty much just his servants who, yeah, he gets along with, but they're ultimately in his employment and everybody knows it, like I was saying earlier. The Beast is especially grumpy and angry, and he's stewing in his castle. And I think we can assume Tamlin's pretty much been in the same boat, just, in his manner instead. He made a bad first impression with Feyre because he can't shake this demeanor that has become who he is, even if he has good intentions and a good heart. Because yes, I believe that while Tamlin has many faults, he is not innately a malicious person, and he does at least try to do good in his very twisted way sometimes. Lucian, like the candlestick from Beauty and the Beast Luminaire, is the one who has had to encourage Tamlin, aka the Beast, to adjust his behavior and remember how to act like a gentleman. And it's so foreign to Tamlin that he's all awkward with these compliments like, "Your hair is clean."
Feyre is still feeling very validly uneasy, and she says to Tamlin, "Do you want me to earn my keep?" Tamlin says, "What you do with your life isn't my problem." To which Lucian pointedly clears his throat, and here's my dating advice for Tamlin. You're doing okay. You're doing better. Complimenting her hair, it's a great start.
It's like a B-. He gets a B- for effort here.
That's even a little generous. And look, we all know the playing hard to get, who can care less game. Who hasn't played that with a potential romantic partner? But maybe, just maybe, don't play the game so hard that you say what you do with your life isn't my problem. That's a little too I don't care about you, and not a great way to make a girl fall for you. There is my dating advice for Tamlin. Now, to his credit, after Lucian coughs at him, Timmy Tam says, "Do you have any interests?" Better, Tamlin. Better.
Now, Lucian's response to her silence is, quote, "so typically human." But let's just think about this for a moment. The Fae are practically immortal. They have plenty of time for interests in a way mortals, especially those in poverty like Feyre, don't have. They can't relate to her and she can't relate to them. They come from different worlds. But then Tamlin, he really puts a nail in his own coffin when he says, "You're insignificant enough to not ruffle this estate." We were trying so hard there for a second.
That playing hard to get game, Tamlin, you're playing it too well. You need to ease up a little.
I can only help him so much by explaining these complex emotions and the why behind he's doing this, but nope. This really just lays it on thick that she's just a human and he doesn't care about her, which obviously isn't entirely true, but that's how it's coming off.
Well, let's get into this Tamlin character analysis, because I think we're both in agreement, at least for this episode.
Yeah.
Tamlin is an incredibly complicated character. And one of his many complicated character traits is that he is someone who is perfectly at peace, burying his head in the sand. And when it comes to facing the consequences of his own actions, he doesn't. We see this with how he gave up sending out sentries to break the curse. We see this with how he locks Feyre up next book. We see this with how his sentries don't do shit when he gets angry and breaks an entire study. And we see it here. Lucian is asking Feyre for details of how Andras was killed, and Tamlin says, "Enough, Lucian," when we get to Lucian mentioning how he was skinned. Tamlin doesn't want to know the details because he knows that he is responsible. He does not want to face the negative consequences of his own actions.
He won't even fully face the consequence that is needing to court the woman who can break the curse. Speaking of Tamlin's anger management, or lack thereof, we will obviously see this on full display and talk about it a lot next book, but there are moments throughout A Court of Thorns and Roses that really plant the seeds, and we're going to call them out because remember, hindsight is 20/20.
And I think one of the biggest hints we get here is SJM is using Tamlin's claws poking out of his skin as his anger meter, we'll call it. It's described how his claws embed into the wood of his chair despite him staying in his human form. This seemingly lack of control over his anger or frustration sets us up for next book when he goes full unhinged. He destroys a study out of inability to control his anger when Feyre says that she feels like she's drowning.
Oh, Tamlin. Stay tuned for Claw Watch.
Claw Watch. I feel like we need like a sting for that. Like Claw Watch. Bow.
You can read Tamlin's actions and behaviors two completely different ways, especially in the first half of this book or so. For instance, a great example of this, being able to see something two different ways is here in the dining room. It could be seen as caring that Tamlin's making Feyre eat and then helping her by stopping her from hurling her guts up. He recognizes Feyre needs to eat, he knows that it's safe to eat, and he knows how difficult it is to convince her. So he does what he has to help her understand that yes, the food is safe. He's looking out for her greater well-being by magically binding her to her chair and demanding she eat. Then he keeps looking out for her greater well-being by making the food go away once she's had enough so she doesn't throw it all up. What a nice guy for giving her some tough love right now and making sure that she stays healthy and she gains some strength. On the other hand, you can also look at the same scene as a red flag where Tamlin is already showing signs where he is in control of Feyre and he is doing what he thinks is best for her. He's taking away her choice and excusing it as protection. It's so complicated because both perspectives can weirdly coexist, again, on that reread here, and that is why I really appreciate this book so much on that reread, because you can look at instances like this in two completely different ways and both of them can hold truth to them.
Lucian and Tamlin ask about Isaac, though. And I love this moment where Feyre says that there was a man back in her village that she was close to, and quote, Tamlin and Lucian exchange glances. You just know that they're like talking, like, you know how when you know someone really well and you just are able to like make eye contact with them and they immediately know what you're saying? You know that they're like, fuck, dude, what do we do? I don't know, dude. What do we do? Like, she has a boy. I don't know. Like, that's just what they're saying with their eyes. And then even when she denies loving Isaac, they share a look again. Bro, she doesn't love him. Thank God. Oh my God. I know, bro. Thank God. Like, oh man, this might be easier than we thought. Man, like,
I'm dying over these awkward frat boy personas that you have. Like, I'm so here for it. And again, I just cannot express how much of different colleges we went to with different kinds of frat boys.
To be fair, you did come to visit me in college and you played beer pong with said frat boys, and I'm pretty sure we wiped the floor with them. So.
We sure did. Yes. We sure did. Yes, we did. That was first time you played beer pong.
And I was definitely 21. Feyre does say aloud, do you both really have nothing better to do than ask about my love life? No, actually, Feyre, this is probably the most productive thing that they could be doing right now to save their entire court, asking you about fucking Isaac.
Note that this conversation starts when Lucian concedes his stand-up against them preference and resigns to relying on this human Feyre, where he is the one asking questions and nudging Tamlin to step up his courtship game. Last thing I'll say here from this dining room scene. Tamlin expects that because he, quote-unquote, saved Feyre, he should automatically earn her respect. And when he metaphorically holds out a hand to her and she slaps it away throughout this stretch of chapters, he gets pissed because he thinks that he's owed her respect. And I'm just going to say it here. Lucian is the most emotionally stable out of the trio, at least right now.
That's deeply unfortunate. Now, at these many, many dining room scenes that we're going to be covering today, you know what is the one beverage that I never hear mentioned?
What's that?
Water. They need to be hydrated.
Yes, but healthy hydration isn't just about drinking water. It's about water and electrolytes.
It makes sense. And I've been feeling like I haven't been getting enough hydration in the ways that I needed to lately. I'd go through my days, I'd start to feel sluggish, or heck, I'd even start to get headaches. Enter Element.
Element has enough sodium, potassium, and magnesium to get you feeling and performing your best. Plus, it has zero sugar, artificial flavors, or other dodgy ingredients to hold you back. You're also guaranteed to find an Element flavor that you love. I especially love to drink watermelon salt or mango chili after my afternoon walk with my toddlers. It hydrates me and gives me that zip of energy without the caffeine to get through the fourth quarter of the day. If you're a parent, you know.
Today's episode for me is brought to you by Watermelon Salt Element. It's in my water glass right now. Element came up with a fantastic offer for our listeners. Just go to drinklmnt.com/FFG to get a free sample pack with any purchase. That's drinklmnt.com/FFG.
All right, and we get to the first full day in the spring court. Oh my gosh, it's only day one here. I just need to give Alice a little more praise. I know we already have, but I love her so much. When Fae-vorite, she ensnares her, she says that at least Fae-vorite, she's willing to put up a fight. I think that Fae-vorite, she is starting to really rub off on Alice. She's at least starting to respect her, and she's like, okay, I can see how this might work out with this human. She can hang. And then Fae-vorite asks what she's supposed to do now. It's such a loaded question. What is she supposed to do with the rest of her mortal life? Nicole, I have a question. What would you do in the spring court if you were in Fae-vorite's position?
I would probably pick up a new hobby. I would do something that I've always wanted to do, but never had time to do. I know she does that eventually with painting and stuff like that. I would be like, you know what? What's something that I've always wanted to do, but couldn't? I'll learn calligraphy. I'll do something wild and crazy. Apparently that's my wild and crazy. Also, times have changed. What about you? What would you do?
I would write. I would finally write. I want to write my book so badly, and there's just absolutely no time for it right now, and so I would just love to do that.
Oh, I love that for you. My goal is for you and I to do a month sabbatical in Europe somewhere where you get to work on your book, I get to work on my shit. I'm excited. That'll happen.
Your calligraphy, apparently.
My calligraphy, apparently. Now, the next day as Fae-vorite is walking down the hall, she mentions how she smells hyacinth and hears bunting birds chirping. I wanted to just pull out some hyacinth and bunting birds meanings. So because that's what I do now apparently on this podcast is I pull out birds and flower meanings. Hyacinth means a desire for forgiveness and desire for serenity. That sounds about right. And a bunting, this is a bunting bird, represents using your voice to sing your thoughts and speak from your heart. A painting bunting also is representative of reminding you to add color to your life. That checks for our girl Fae-vorite. Now, I do have another piece of small dating advice for Tamlin, and I don't think it's the last one of this episode. Don't ever call a woman you. That's it. That's the tweet. But then Fae-vorite asks what Andrus was doing in the mortal lands, and we get our first mini info download. We learn that there is a sickness in these lands, and it has been there for almost 50 years. It is why his lands are almost empty. Most fairies have left. Also, he doesn't mention the glamour that he has on a lot of fairies, but we're just going to overlook that for right now. While the blight has spread slowly, it has made magic start acting strangely. The masks are a permanent result of this sickness, but the sickness is only focused on magic. It's not like an illness that, we humans could catch like a cold. But that doesn't mean it won't hurt the human lands eventually, because there is a chance that it might move into the mortal lands, although Tamlin is unsure. Now, in hindsight, we know that this sickness is Amarantha, who has ruled for 49 years. She hosted a masquerade that used this opportunity to curse the spring court, and therefore no one could take off their masks. And Andrus was in the woods looking for a cure indeed. And you, Fae-vorite darling, most definitely are the cure. So Andrus did find it. Yay, Andrus. I don't think he gets enough credit for saving the world.
He will forever live on in our memories. Oh man, we got a claw watch here. At the end of this conversation, Tamlin's claws are poking out. He's pissed at the situation he's in, that's for sure, as he's just talking about everything that's going on with the blight and this illness and the masks, and his claws start poking out there because he doesn't like any of it, which... fair. I get that.
It's extremely fair. We learned from Alice later that part of the curse was that Tamlin was unable to explain to the mortal girl, who he would need to have fallen in love with him, that Amarantha was the cause of the mask and the sickness and yada, yada, yada. So for a workaround way to explain it, I gotta give Timmy Tam some credit, because he does pretty good. I mean, everything is on the page here. It's just in, code. I also love that Feyre is horrified by the idea of having to live in a mask for 50 years. Her horror meter is about to go out of whack because right now it's really low if this is what's causing her to be horrified, and it'll quickly go up throughout this book as she meets more creatures and faces off with a giant worm,
among other things. Later on, while Feyre is in the garden, she notices a shimmering in the corner of her eye, and it's two small figures no taller than her waist. They quickly vanish, but there is speculation at what they are. Nicole's going to discuss one option that I really love in today's Maas vs. Madness end of episode segment, but we do have two options here. Some people think it's Alice's nephews, since these shimmering creatures are described as like childlike, wanting to play and little and whatnot. However, Alice does explain that her nephews were sent far away to stay hidden. So I'm going to assume that they are not at this manor. The manor is not far away. They're probably somewhere else in the Spring Court. We have to remember how massive these territories are. My second option here for what these shimmering figures are that they are glamored fairies, because we know many are indeed glamored all around the property, so not to freak Feyre out. And she's getting a little glimpse of them kind of peeking behind the glamour right here. But I'll be honest, I like Nicole's idea that she presents in the Maas vs. Madness, which brings up something from early chapters of Throne of Glass.
And it's actually not even like a really big spoiler. So if you haven't read Throne of Glass, it's not like a big plot spoiler. So just so you know.
We just got to give those spoiler warnings because we don't want to mess with anything.
We don't want to mess with it. No. Now we're in the dining room again. Last episode, we went into theory land about Mama Archeron, wondering if she was a descendant of the high fae warrior that the bone carver mentions in ACOTAR. Now there's a lot of setup for us to believe that at least one of the Archeron parents are one of these high fae descendants. But right here, as they're talking about the fairy stereotypes, Tamlin says, quote, "Didn't your mother tell you anything about us?" Mother, not parents. Now, this could very much be a, mother tells the bedtime stories to the children meaning. And while I definitely don't think Tamlin knows anything about Mama Archeron and her high fae possible descendant nature, whatever, this very well might be a nod from Sarah J. Maas for us to start wondering if Mama Archeron did indeed have secrets that she was holding back. For our full mention of the Mama Archeron high fae descendant theory, please check out episode 1 if you haven't already. It's a great episode. You'll love it. Tamlin's flirting attempts do get better, though. I don't know if Timmy Tam just finally got his head out of his ass or if he took notes from Lucian or what, but his flirting is definitely getting better. First off, he's wearing a white button shirt with the sleeves rolled up to the elbows, showing off his muscled forearms. Listen, I'm a woman with simple wants, simple needs, and this is one of them. Whenever Brett wears a button-down shirt with his sleeves rolled up, I am feral. I am feral. But then he asks if she'd like to take a tour with him around the grounds. Look, asking someone out is absolutely terrifying. It takes a lot of bravery and a lot of vulnerability, and Feyre takes his vulnerability and slaps it to the ground with a, quote, "I'd prefer to spend time alone today." And when Tamlin tries a different strategy, she cuts him off with a, "No thank you." Damn, girl. Woof. Now, because we're on Claw Watch, after Tamlin gets rejected twice, he, quote, clenched his hands into fists as if he was fighting against the claws itching to burst out, showing that he's frustrated that he's put himself out there and, to try to get the curse broken to save his entire court. And he's pissed that his efforts are being shot down, which I do see both sides here. Tamlin is trying. And I mean, to be fair, he did start off this conversation with you. Let us not forget that. And he is getting shot down, probably cursing the Cauldron for the hand it dealt him again. And Feyre was taken away from her family, from what she knows, and put in a place where she's been told her entire life fairies are ready to kill her and they will enjoy doing it. Of course, she doesn't freaking trust him. Also, she is a woman on a mission here. She is trying to get to Lucian to convince him to talk to Tamlin to let her go. Right now, Tamlin is just getting in the way of her own masterminding, which shouts to our ACOTAR playlist because yes, that is a song on there during the Spring Court stretch.
Okay, so yes, she is strategizing, But I'd also like to point out that her mastermind plan still relies on appealing to Tamlin. He's ultimately the one in control. He's the one in the powerful position, and she's having to cater to him. Again, that's a theme in the first book and in the second book there too. Yep.
Woof. But now Fae-vorite does get to Lucian, and they do go on a little hunt together. And as they're starting their hunt, we get several more mentions of foxglove, which if you're like me and you didn't know that foxglove was a flower until this deep dive, and I've read this book a lot. I will not even admit what I thought it was. I'm not going to even do that. Foxglove is a flower. And let's do a quick download of what foxglove means. They symbolize creativity, bravery, and healing. However, foxglove is also associated with fairy tales and fairies.
I'm loving your level of detail with looking up all these spring court plants, because I never would have thought to do that. I just read it and it's like, oh, that's a lovely description, and I keep reading. All the signs that Fae-vorite doesn't belong in the spring court are here on these pages. Fae-vorite reflects that she can't just stay here forever until she dies. When we think about her big shift in ACOMAF, we have to remember that she felt this sense of feeling trapped here even in these early chapters when she's a human. Yes, it absolutely becomes home to her, but she never chose to be in the spring court. She did not actively choose for it to ever be her home from the get-go.
Ugh. While on their hunt, Fae-vorite asks Lucian, where is the rest of Tamlin's court? First off, the fact that she literally says Tamlin's court and didn't put High Lord together, I've got some words for you, Fae-vorite, but we're going to overlook that right now. Secondly, Lucian retorts back with how did you know about the court? And she says, quote, he asked so quickly that I realized he thought I'd meant something else. I love this moment on a reread because yes, he did think that she knew more about the Amarantha situation and was quite surprised.
See, I thought that he was suspicious more that she knew Tamlin was the High Lord and not necessarily anything about Amarantha.
Oh, interesting. I figured that he thought that she knew that Amarantha was holding some of the court or had cursed some of the court, or she just knew that like things weren't right in the court because of something.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking about it as in like they're all trying to keep it under wraps that he is the High Lord.
That could be it too. I could totally see that. Lucian does go on to say that the magic used for the curse was, quote, sent from the shitholes of hell, to which he immediately realizes that they are out in the open and he should not have said that because it could get back to her. Finally, some more information. Her, yes, because Amarantha has creatures roaming around the spring court lands who indeed do report back to her. Stay tuned for today's Suriel section from Lexi. Also, I love this line, quote, the color had leached from Lucian's sun-kissed skin. Sun-kissed skin indeed. Almost like it's day-kissed, sun, day, because he is indeed the son of Helion, High Lord of the Day Court. But I love that this line is immediately followed up with a note of his hands dragging through his hair, the red hair that he got from his mother and the sun-kissed skin that he got from his birth father, Helion. Already here on the page. This passage is laden with Fae-vorite future status and powers foreshadowing. Quote, Prythian was ruled by 7 high lords. Perhaps this she was whoever governed this territory. If not a high lord, then a high lady, if that was even possible. It is indeed possible, Fae-vorite, and you will indeed be a high lady. Also, when discussing Tamlin's shape-shifting powers, she thinks how she does not have the nerve to ask if Tamlin can change her into another shape. You won't have to ask because you will receive this power directly from him. I love these lines.
Which I just have to say here, she is going to use shape-shifting in such cooler ways than he does. But I'll hold off on all that discussion until we get to her ability to literally shape-shift into anyone, not just anything or man-bear pig, because that is Tamlin's chosen beast form, apparently. But anyone, like Ianthe, or, again, anyone. That's huge. Ah, gosh, that's huge.
She even uses it to make wings and fly. Like, who would choose man-bear pig over fly?
I don't know.
I don't either.
I also have to wonder, too, if his, like... He's part elk, he's part wolf or hound, and he's part lion. And again, that just kind of caters to his indecisiveness. He is just a half-assed person who cannot even decide on a beast form. I don't know if that's actually the reasoning behind it, but that's just my head canon.
That's canon. But Lucian does go on to mention that lesser fairies have natural-born affinities. Quote, I don't clean anything in sight or lure mortals to a watery death or grant you answers to whatever questions you might have if you trap me. Hello, Kelpie and Suriel. I don't know about the cleaning everything in sight. Do you know?
I don't know, but I would love to request one, please, because I want one of these fairies to come live with me, please and thank you.
That would be perfect. Because I don't think it's Urisk, which is what Alice is. I don't think that's... Because she's not a creature.
To our knowledge, we don't know what those fairies might be. Maybe that was something that SJM was like planting a seed for later, but... Or who knows? If anybody does know of one of those creatures, let us know. Feyre, she presses on about this fairy who will answer your questions. And Lucian answers that they are old and wicked.
Perhaps to you, Lucian. But in my opinion, and I don't know if you agree with me here, Lex, the Suriel is one of the best characters. I wept like a baby when it died in book 3. So there, Lucian, there. But Lucian goes on to say that he will tell Tamlin to put Feyre under house arrest if she keeps asking these questions. Oh God! Both of these boys.
God. Man!
I think that's Lucian's
book 1.
I think that's Lucian's second L in this. We're not even halfway through the episode, and it's already his second L, dude. But then we run into the bogey. I do want to point out in book 1 audiobook, it's pronounced bog. And then later on, she starts pronouncing it bogey. SJM did confirm it is pronounced bogey. Lucian starts to freak out and saying like, be quiet, human, be quiet. And tells Feyre not to react or look and just stare ahead. First off, this is where I would have died in Prythian. I would have instantly reacted. I'm a people pleaser. So if it said, it's like, look at me, I would have been like, yeah, it's rude not to look. So yeah, I guess I will look at you. Secondly, I do want to do a huge shout out to Jennifer Ikeda, who narrated this book, and the bogey is perfect. It's chef's kiss. How she narrates it is perfect. Thirdly, all I can think about is in Avatar: The Last Airbender, the cartoon version. I don't know if it's in the live action because I haven't gotten there yet. But when Aang goes to the spirit world and encounters the face stealer, and if you make any emotional reaction, it will steal your face. And they say that is a children's show, Nickelodeon. However, unlike the face stealer, the bogey, when you acknowledge it, it becomes real and can kill you. I'm not going to lie, I really wish the bogey showed up more in our story because this is terrifying.
I definitely agree. We do get one more brief mention of the bogey when Feyre and Lucian sick it on the evil Hybern twins. I want to say the murder twins, wrong series. But yes, I love how we're starting to encounter these terrifying creatures in Prythian. And then the way that Feyre, she is thinking of happy things makes my heart melt. She thinks of hot bread and full bellies, which of course, all she's known for years is starvation. So of course, she's going to think of full bellies and hot bread. Oh, I love that so much. Have I mentioned that she's a survivor yet? And then, ladies and gentlemen, Feyre thinks of, and I quote, a starry, unclouded night sky, peaceful and glittering and endless. Oh! I get chills every single time. I literally have chills all running through my body right now. The night sky helps calm her. It helps center her. When she has to think happy thoughts, that is what she thinks of. And she loves stars and thinks of the night as a happy and good thing and not something to fear. Reese, we're coming for you, baby. Just hold on a little longer. I want him so badly. 6 more episodes.
Not even. He's about to come up in episode 4.
You're right. He is coming to us in episode 4. We'll get him a lot in the last 2 episodes of this one. And then, oh my gosh, I'm so excited for ACOMAF. That's all I can say.
I can't wait for ACOMAF.
You know, Nicole, something else that I'm really excited about. Okay, so first I have to back up here. You know how I have a lot of trouble turning my brain off at night and I have to listen to the exact same audiobook every single night to even have a chance at falling asleep? And It's like a really weird thing of mine. Okay.
Yes, I do.
I found something. It is my new obsession. And listen to this. It is a fantasy role-playing meditation podcast.
What?
Yes. That's what I thought when I first heard it. I was like, wait, what? Anomaly is a new podcast that calmly immerses you in this fantastical, magical world. It's like Dungeons and Dragons, which we still need to get back to playing that, by the way. It's like Dungeons and Dragons meets meditation. Like, okay, so the other night I fell asleep while I was mentally brewing potions. And then last night I went down into like this beautiful canyon and I was like following a phoenix and it was just incredible. And it's just so positive and lovely and magical. And I'm gushing. But oh my God, I am so excited about this.
I'm going to listen to this tonight because this is literally my dream. Like, I love meditation. I haven't done it in for freaking ever because it always made me really fidgety and my mind would start to wonder, but if I'm in a freaking fantasy world, this is my dream. This is my dream.
Look for Anomaly on Spotify, Apple, or really wherever you listen to podcasts. It's Anomaly spelled with an I-E at the end, not a Y. So go to seekanomaly.com, and that's spelled SEEK ANOMALIE.com to find out more.
I'm literally doing this tonight. Like, I'm literally...
Nicole, it's amazing.
And then Lexi, guess where?
What?
Guess where we go?
I'm stumped. You tell me, Nicole.
To the dining room again. So when Lucian and Fae-vorite get back from hunting, Tamlin is sitting at the dining room table with a goblet in hand and has a claw out circling the goblet. He is pissed because Fae-vorite blew him off in favor of spending time with Lucian. Oh, so begins the Tamlin jealousy of Lucian. Oy. And Lucian knows he fucked up. So he tries to get Fae-vorite to answer Tamlin's questions, but she is like, I will not say anything. Like, the fact that these two have any love story is honestly shocking. In Tamlin's defense, this does look like she favors spending time with Lucian, despite the fact that Lucian knows she needs to fall in love with Tamlin. There is that, bro, you know she's supposed to like me, bro. Like, why are you letting her fall for you, bro? Now, playing devil's advocate, however, he does not consider that Lucian might be spending this time playing wingman and instead helping Tamlin's image in her eye, which he kind of did. He talked about how Tamlin helped him after his eye got ripped out. Yummy.
Yeah. Oh, God, I can't believe I'm saying this. I'm going to have to side with Tamlin on this one.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'm not going to say that often on this podcast. But in this instance, I can understand where he's coming from. This is the beginning of poor Lucian being caught in the middle of Tamlin and Fae-vorite, which I have so much to say about in ACOTAR. Tamlin got his head out of his ass and tried being nice to Fae-vorite. He extended that metaphorical hand to her, and she didn't take it, which fair for her. She's still a little standoffish with this handsome Fae man-bear pig. I never thought I would ever say those words, but here we are. I totally get it, girl. And instead, she sought out Lucian to go be buddy-buddy. Again, he's a lot more approachable even when he's threatening to kill her, because that is just how things are right now. And Tamlin, I get it. Like, he's understandably like, what the fuck, dude? Like, I kind of need to call dibs here. And because there is a curse. And again, we all know this.
I love this idea that like Fae-vorite walks in and they're like, dibs. like dibs. But obviously, he obvious has dibs. Like, it's the curse that will make or break the spring court's future.
Yes. And then those dibs are really going to take a dark turn next book. So.
Oh, yeah. Reese is like, I had dibs when she was born, bitch. But then Lucian.
Which is creepy in its own way, but that's a whole other story.
Someone posted, they're like, do you think it's weird that Fae-vorite is closer to Nyx's age than she is to Rhys-Sam's age? And
by like a lot.
I can't unsee it. That really fucked with my head.
It's like our viral Romantasy Girls video where it's like, I'm a Romantasy girl. The age gap doesn't matter to me.
When the age gap is 483 years, it's like, it's fine. But then Lucian tells Tamlin about the bogey, and Tamlin's claws like punch out and he storms out of the dining room. There's our claw watch there. I find it interesting that despite him changing into animal features, even if it's as subtle as claws punching out, an analogy that SJM does use regularly to symbolize him losing control of his anger, so on and so forth, he does close the door behind him with unnerving gentleness. The way I took it is that his animal form is the first thing he loses control over, but him closing the door is him trying to like grasp any sense of control over his emotions.
It's like a reflection of his inner self versus outer self. Inwardly, he loses control, but outwardly, he is composed. And he's really burying those emotions deep down. And that's, again, where those claws like come out, where it's like that inner loss of control. It's literally poking out to his composedness.
But then later that night, Fae-vorite is sitting at her window, absolutely not waiting for Tamlin to come home, when she looks outside and she sees, quote, not a fairy, but a man, my father. The first time I read this, I was jumping for joy. I was like, oh my God, the father's not useless. He did it after all. Little did I know. Now, this is cool foreshadowing for not only us to learn that Nesta ended up going after her when Tamlin took her away, but also for Papa Archeron's eventual coming to their rescue in Prythian to save his daughters. Just many, 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 many pages from now. She starts to sneak out to go to see her father, who is obviously definitely not her father. She's sneaking through the halls through the seemingly empty house. We will later learn that there are fairies everywhere. Watching her have this like Mission Impossible moment, like dun, 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 dun. And I can just see their conversation so perfectly. It's like, dude, does she not know we're here? Like, I don't think so. Like, does she think she's being stealthy? Should we tell someone? I don't know. Like, apparently everyone in the Spring Court is just a frat boy.
I was gonna say, I had no idea the Spring Court was such a frat house.
It's canon now. That's what it is.
Oh my, again, it's a liberal arts college. And then the night court, that is where, like, because I went to University of Colorado, I went to, I'll say, a traditional college, and that's where the real frat boys are.
I don't even know what that means.
Oh, you sweet summer child. That's so cute. Now, here are some wink, wink, hint, hint moments that show this is not Papa Archeron. First of all, he's not wearing enough clothes for the winter beyond the wall. He is limping, and there are no horses in sight. And this one hurts my heart the most. His brown eyes are clear for once. Feyre, she is so blinded by her emotions that she doesn't recognize the red flags that she, a huntress, otherwise would have picked up. She's just dead set on taking this opportunity to flee with her family, get as far away from Prythian and this man-bear pig as possible, and escape the oncoming Blythe. All of this amounts to the realization when Tamlin stops her and she thinks, of course this isn't my father. Oh, it's heartbreaking. She's like, oh yeah, of course that's not my father, because he wouldn't do this. He wouldn't be able to, both mentally and physically capable of it. She then sees other desires from this puka, a bow and quiver of ash arrows, and then it turns into a large pack laden with supplies, and then another ripple, and her sisters are on the ground together weeping. Oh, it's like the puka's just trying every possibility to get her back to it.
Also, I do want to do a quick claw watch again. Yes, Tamlin's claws are out in this entire conversation, and it makes sense from his POV. The one salvation that can possibly help his lands, that he is even trying to like extend that hand paw out to, was just about to go and get herself killed like an idiot, in his eyes at least. Maybe he's starting to care for her a little bit more, but to be honest, I really do think he's just like, this is my one shot and you almost ruined it.
Come on, Alice, you gotta hit it a little harder with that onboarding.
Yeah, Alice, not Tamlin.
Exactly.
Alice's work. One of the big questions people have from this conversation is, why the heck does Tamlin not just tell her how he's taking care of her family? And my guess is because he sees how little she trusts him. I mean, she just tried to run away despite all that he's told her and how she needs to stay here for the treaty and yada, yada, yada. Now, to be fair, that is a lie, but just, not the point right now. Of course, she wouldn't believe him if he told her that he was taking care of her family in this way. She also probably would get really pissed at the glamour that he put on them. I mean, she even does later, and that's when she warms up to him. So if all of this did happen, he would be right back where he started, trying to get in her favor, and honestly, even then some.
I have a different approach. Ooh. I will argue, I see all of those reasonings there, and I think that is the point in the storytelling here. But I will argue that this right here is part of the reasoning why he should tell her that he's been taking care of her family. Yes, he knows that she doesn't trust him. I feel like this would be a way to bridge the gap of that mistrust that they have. He's relying on her to trust that he's taking care of them right now, when he could explain himself just a little bit more and help show her that he can be trusted with what he's telling her, and that yes, they are being taken care of, and here is why. Maybe that's just the questioner in me too, where it's like, yes, you tell me, but I need an explanation of why. Why should I trust this? Why should I lean into this?
Well, and something I just realized is also she thinks that fairies can't lie. So even if he doesn't know that, if she heard this from him, she would be like, well, fairies can't lie, so I guess that this is true.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
exactly.
a good point.
Yeah, Tamlin can see how distraught Feyre is over not being able to provide for her family, and it's like he can't understand why she would want to go back to that hovel. He even says, home to what exactly? You'd prefer that miserable human existence to this?
Oh, Tamlin.
And then he really insults her with the truth by saying, your family is better cared for now than they were when you were there.
Ooh. Dude.
And it's like, I get that he's trying to make it better, but it's just like, oh my God, just stop talking. Which, understandably, this makes her start spiraling. It would make me start spiraling too. Feyre, she realizes she won't matter, that she'll be forgotten, that everything her life has revolved around doesn't matter anymore after she's literally been taken away from them by him. I again, he took her away from her family. Yes, of course, there's a treaty and blah, 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 but he took her away from her family, and he's not really understanding that concept here. Feyre even rubs at her chest, feeling this pain of knowing how insignificant she is, even to her family. The love and emotions may not have outwardly been there, obviously, but at least she was needed for their survival. And now that's not even important anymore, leaving her with nothing. Feyre has nothing as far as she's concerned. Oh God, that made me just so sad.
That was so sad.
Her vow to her mother is fulfilled, and it leaves her hollow because that promise to her mother was what kept her going, kept her waking up at the crack of dawn to go hunt every day, but it also kept her tethered to something that she didn't want for herself. And this actually brings us to one of my favorite quotes in this book. My life was now owned by the treaty, but perhaps I'd been freed in another sort of way. And you can like literally see her inner monologue just shifting perspectives from that survival mode, that need to take care of her family, to, oh my gosh, what do I want to do? I was not originally crazy about Feyre in the first book after I first read it. And I have some issues with her in ACOTAR that I will talk about later, but this deep dive is actually making me really appreciate her in a new way. I love it. I hope it's helping you all too.
I think she's so much stronger than people give her credit for, and we'll get into that a lot more later, but she does have a lot more depth to a personality, even though she's not like as outwardly personality driven as, for instance, like Bryce and the female main character in Throne of Glass. Like she is still very deep, and I can't wait. I love Feyre.
Tamlin and Feyre have the closest thing to a heart-to-heart here, ending with Tamlin admitting everything is different now. Oof, the weight of that one word. This was actually when I really picked up interest in the book. The promise of finding out why things are so different now, and how our crew here is going to help solve them. All right, so let's fast forward 3 days, and we get a line that has some serious heavy lifting. Lucien says, Tamlin gets into moods. Indeed, he frickin' does.
Yes, he does.
I don't feel like I need to harp on this because it explains itself. And Nicole and I have already talked endlessly about Tamlin this episode, but obviously, yes, he does get into moods. And I have to emphasize his unresolved mental health struggles. He does not know how to process his emotions. He never learned. He grew up with a terrible father and brothers, and he's trying to be a good person, but it's almost like being good doesn't come naturally. I remember the parallels of him and the Beast from Beauty and the Beast that I was talking about earlier. Being good doesn't come naturally, not because he doesn't have a good heart, but because he has so much inner conflict that he doesn't really try to sort through. He genuinely doesn't know how, and just keeps pushing forward because he's got to stay focused, stay ahead, just keep putting one foot in front of the other without really reflecting on his self. He needs some better help. I
was going to say, see BetterHelp, a sponsor of today's podcast.
I'm not excusing Tamlin's anger. Nicole and I are never going to excuse his anger and his bad treatment. We are, however, trying to understand the why behind it. The same thing goes with other characters. Nest is another great example that we'll get to way later. He is his own worst enemy, and we're not going to wash away that complex and struggling characterization by just simply pointing the finger and saying, red flag, because yes, they are red flags in hindsight. These moods are definitely red flags. But I just had to throw out that he has had his own difficult emotional journey, and he's not willing to face his inner demons to start gaining control over them. Now, Lucien does follow up by essentially admitting that Tamlin would indeed be so brutal to shred someone for disobeying him by trying to help him when he's talking about hunting the bogey here. Because you don't hold on to power by being everyone's friend. That's what Lucien is saying here. It's very hard to imagine Tamlin doing something like this, shredding someone for trying to help him. But we have to remember he does have the Sentinels killed who were on duty when Feyre escaped with Mor, and he thought that she was kidnapped by the Night Court. Just had to throw that out there because I reread that part and I was like, oh dear, I forgot.
Let's also remember that when Ianthe let in the Naga in the Spring Court to try to get her own control back because she's a monster, Tamlin did whip the people on duty during that time. And Feyre was the one who stepped in and was like, fuck no, don't do this. Tamlin, I think, is always looking for the easiest way out. He is, I'm never going to say someone is lazy, but he doesn't like doing hard work that's not man, bear, pig hard work. He understands the feral hard work, but he does not understand the politicking hard work.
Or the inner self hard work, too.
Tamlin is a very complicated character. And like Lexi said, like, we're never going to just excuse anything. We're always going to look at the complexities of him. And yes, we do understand that he is an abusive ex-partner. Like, we're not going to overlook that.
Oh, yeah. But we're not there yet.
Nope, not yet. Now, after this exchange, our girl Feyre goes to Betty Bye. But you know what I've always wondered, Lexi? What kind of sheets do they use in the Spring Court? Because that is a luxurious bed, and I bet the sheets are extra luxe as well.
Oh, they have to have Miracle Made sheets.
Absolutely.
Hands down. Yes, hands down. They're the softest. And I just snuggle up in them, and it's just I just feel luxurious for
I feel like I'm in the
them.
Spring Court. Actually, the Night Court. The Night Court's even supposed to have better sheets. I bet they're in the Night Court too. So I've used Miracle Made sheets on my bed, and I'm flat out, I'm obsessed with them. I love
Me too.
them so
Me too.
much.
We're literally jumping out of our seats wanting to talk about Miracle Made sheets right now.
Using silver infused fabrics inspired by NASA, Miracle Made sheets are thermoregulating. And here's my favorite part. Brett is a furnace when he sleeps. I love that man to death, but he is a furnace. But since switching to Miracle Made, I have stayed the perfect temperature every single night. And it's been amazing. I love it so much. Plus, these sheets are luxuriously comfortable, like Night Court luxuriously comfortable, without the high price tag of other luxury brands. They feel so nice, if not even nicer than some 5-star hotel sheets.
And Miracle Made offers a whole line of self-cleaning, eco-friendly bedding such as sheets, pillowcases, and comforters that prevent 99% of bacteria and require 3 times less laundry. I know I love that. I am always doing laundry, and thank goodness our sheets are not one of them always. Sleep is so important, and knowing that every night I get to lay down on insanely comfortable and clean sheets, it's just been such a game changer for myself and for my husband. These sheets are also husband approved.
Same. Brett loves these sheets. It's awesome. Go to trymiracle.com/FF to try Miracle Made sheets today. And whether you're buying them for yourself or a gift for a loved one, if you order today, you can save over 40% off, 40% off. And if you use our promo code FF at checkout, you will get 3 free towels and save an extra 20% off. Miracle is so confident in their product, it is backed with a 30-day money-backed guarantee. So if you aren't 100% satisfied, you will get a full refund.
Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/FF and use the code FF to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save an extra 20% off. Again, that's trymiracle.com/FF to treat yourself. And thank you, Miracle Made, for sponsoring this episode.
And then we move into Feyre's dream. And holy God, there is so much foreshadowing here, so we're going beat by beat. Feyre is in the woods hunting, but a shadow is lurking, no, watching in the background. Quote, "I didn't dare turn to look at it to see who might be within that shadow." Oh, hi, Rhysand, watching over his human mate. I love this because he's aware of her, not what she is yet, but he's just aware that she exists. He's almost watching over her in that way, but she isn't aware of him. Hence he's watching her, but she's not even daring a glance to look back at him. That's so good. But then the wolf is staring as if it's waiting and daring for her to fire an ash arrow. Yes, because Andrus knew that she was the cure to the blight, aka Amarantha, and he was fulfilling his sentry duty by letting her kill him, or waiting for her to kill him. But even though Feyre didn't want to fire the arrow, her hands do it as if she has no control over them, almost like fate or destiny was the one directing her aim. Then a plume of blood spatters the snow, and turns out it wasn't a wolf, but a high Fae man whose blood was suddenly on her fingers. Hello, third task, foreshadowing.
It also shows the hints of just how sorry she truly is for Andrus's death. She's just horrified that she's skinned this high Fae.
I can't even think about
Ramsay Bolton right there. Jeez.
Oh, gross. But Feyre jerks awake from this nightmare and bile rises in her throat because she could still see the high Fae male and the blood covering her hands. Oh, hi, beginning of Akamath, where Feyre regularly wakes up from nightmares of killing innocent fairies only to go hurl her guts up while Tamlin lays in bed, aware but not doing anything.
Oh boy. I'm not going to lie, Nicole. I prefer analyzing these straightforward foreshadowing dreams way more to Violet's dreams in Iron Flame. I will not say any more because of spoilers, but if you know, you know.
Those dreams keep me up at night, I swear to God. Feyre, who's unable to sleep, decides to get up and start making a map of the Spring Court Manor.
I love how Feyre creates these little goals for herself. She takes it upon herself to become so familiar with the house that she can navigate it even if someone blinds her. She needs purpose. She needs a goal. And even these seemingly little ones help her feel like she has a purpose. She definitely reminds me of you, Nicole, where it's like as soon as you complete one thing, you're like, okay, need another really big goal now. And I love it and hate it at the same time.
I was going to say she sounds like an Enneagram 3 and I feel very seen right now. But then Feyre sees her man-bear-pig, who then immediately shifts back to Timitam form. I always have this question whenever in fantasy a beast shifts into a human-like form. To be clothed or not to be clothed, SJM decided to be clothed. And I guess his clothes were either on him as man, bear, pig, which is interesting, or they were in the quote unquote between. Although I don't know why they would be in shreds as they're described here if that was the case. It's just always something I'm so curious about. And it always just feels so like, grr. Because there is sometimes where, you know, beasts shift from beast form to human-esque looking form and they're totally naked, and that to me makes more sense in my opinion. But I don't think SJM wanted Feyre to see Timitam naked yet, so she decided to make him clothed. That's my headcanon.
I never thought of this. I gotta be honest.
It drives me insane.
His clothes must still be kind of there, even though they're not visible in his beast form. And when he's attacked like as a beast, like they're invisibly torn.
But like, are they just under his fur? Like the fur is like the jacket that he puts on top of his clothes?
I don't know. I really don't know. I do not know. But hey, Tamlin killed the bogey. That's darn impressive right there. And Feyre, she thinks so too.
I will say, for something so terrifying, the word bogey is just, I only think of golf, which is just not terrifying.
I'm so proud you think of golf for that, because I've never thought of that, and my husband is the golfer.
Jake would be so proud of me right now. She is walking with Timitam to the infirmary. Feyre is thinking to herself about Tamlin's isolation and the unwanted burden of taking care of this estate. That sounds rather familiar, doesn't it, Feyre? People give Feyre and Tamlin's love story very little credit, and trust us, we will be very open about the wildly unhealthy times that will, be on the page very bluntly. But we also need to remember that who Feyre is now and who Tamlin is, they are very similar people with very similar weights on their shoulders. Tamlin was the bridge that showed her that she has other options in life other than being everyone's caretaker. He showed her that you can choose what you want to do and be happy about it. Basically, Tamlin walked so Rhysand could run in this story. But he was also exactly what Feyre needed now in this chapter of her life. We start to just get a glimpse of that in this section right here. In addition to Feyre starting to warm up to Tamlin just a little bit, it's lukewarm. It's slightly lukewarm. So much so that she does brave touching him and, quote, "The heat of his skin is like an inferno against my cool fingers." But we can also imagine that this might have been one of the first times someone took care of Tamlin. So while this is a big moment for Feyre because she's being brave, she's, letting a little bit of those walls down, it is also a big moment for Tamlin because this is the first time someone's actually looked at him and said, "Hey, can I help you?" without being like a servant of his. You know what I mean?
Yep, definitely. It's the beginning. Their blossoming love story. Now, in hindsight, we know that Tamlin and Lucien staged this fight maybe so that Feyre could hear and start piecing things together. I say maybe because I do think that there were some things that Lucien says, and we'll go through them, that are not just for show. They're not just for Feyre's convenience. Even though the door is slightly open, they can probably hear her wandering nearby. So I do think that they know she's approaching, but I do think that Lucien's also laying into Tamlin a little bit with some truth. Oh, absolutely. Soon after Feyre finds herself eavesdropping, she feels a, quote, pulsing kind wink. She feels a pulsing kind of air hit her in the stomach and a metallic stench filled her nose. Was this magic that was being performed in some way between the two males, or was it one of them like scanning to make sure she was there, and it was that magic that she felt where it's like, oh, yep, Feyre's here. All right, cool. Keep it going, man.
Oh, I love that idea. I didn't think about that. I like that. Yes.
And real quick, if we are on Claw Watch, which we are, Tam's claws are out on his non-bandaged hand, so he's pissed as he's talking here with Lucien.
I love this like Baywatch, but it's Clawwatch.
I'll say this, if we ever had to do a drinking game with Clawwatch, we would be donezo.
We would not make it to the end of the episode because we'd be dead.
It would be a real fun Suriel section, though, I'll tell you that.
So the Suriel does the thing with the T, right? And I'm here to
Cereal.
Lucian says to Tamlin that, quote, there isn't much time and you're just sulking and glowering. You're not even trying to fake it anymore. Way to lean into him, my guy. Earlier, I mentioned how Tamlin is someone who is comfortable burying his head in the sand and would rather stay ignorant than take any action and face his upcoming consequences. Here's how I think about this. It's like you have a dreaded test coming up, and it is so much more comfortable to not study or do any work on it than to sit down and open your book and start the studying process. But then you get to the final hours and you're so horrified by the fact that you haven't studied at all that you continue to procrastinate on studying because of the sheer overwhelm of the amount of work that you have to do and memorize. Tamlin is in the final hours before the dreaded ACTs, and he is so overwhelmed by the amount of studying, or wooing this woman into liking him, that he has to do. So I do want to give Tamlin a slight amount of slack here because this is a very human thing. I have done this so many times. However, this isn't just about him getting a grade. This is about the survival of his entire court. And right now, Lucian is calling him the fuck out on his inactive BS.
And we learn a very vital piece of information, quote, for someone with a heart of stone, yours is certainly soft these days. This will be helpful later on. Tamlin even says, quote, with your affinity for eavesdropping, maybe you'll someday learn something valuable. Yes, indeed.
I love this moment on a reread. Quote, perhaps one they truly didn't want me knowing about, either from lack of trust or because ... because I was no one and nothing to them. Well, they do want you knowing about their conversation here, Feyre, especially the Heart of Stone shit. That's important, which is why they're having this very loud argument. But you're also not no one or nothing. You are quite literally everyone and everything to them. And Lucian is trying to wake Timmy Tam up and fucking realize it. And then when Feyre gets caught eavesdropping and tries to mask her embarrassment with a Lucian, can we go for a ride? And Lucian's like, I won't, but you know who will? Tam. Wingman in full swing. Now, as Feyre and Timitam are walking to the study, because that's her chosen place for the day, we are in Feyre's head. We are in her first person. We notice what she notices. And the fact that on their way to the study with Tamlin, she notices, quote, the powerful muscles of his back shifted beneath his clothes. Feyre, and by extension we as readers, are starting to notice Timitam's body.
His body. What is that from? I keep quoting that. I don't know what it's from. It's got to be from something. I don't think I came up with that myself. While we already highlighted lots of foreshadowing moments, let's turn our full focus onto foreshadowing for the rest of this book and important moments in the rest of the series as well.
Feyre asking what kind of magic they possess to make it eternally spring. Well, it's sexy magic, that's what it is, because the fairies on Calamai produce enough magic to make spring continue in the atmosphere.
Also, foreshadowing Feyre's need for seasons and her ultimate gravitation towards the solar court. The night court, to be exact.
Next up, quote, no sign of a dungeon, no shouts of pleas rising up from hidden chambers below. Not here, but that is exactly what everyone thinks the Court of Nightmares is in the Night Court.
And when she is in the dungeon under the mountain, Feyre can hear other screams from other chambers. That's just, ugh. Oh, that's going to be a tough section to cover.
I love this book for so many reasons, but I love it mostly because we can pick out lines and it means like 5 different things. That's why I think this book is so good. When Feyre is thinking of all the stories she heard growing up, the first rule was, quote, never drink fairy wine. Well, Feyre will do this on multiple occasions. At the summer solstice, much to Lucian's dismay, and again, and again, and again, and again, and again, under the mountain where she becomes Rhysand's plaything. I would be Rhysand's plaything any fucking day.
Alice's frankness about Andros and his death. She acknowledged that he was a good sentinel, but he knew what he would face and he knew he'd likely find trouble, aka be killed by Fae-vorite, because that's why he went beyond the wall in the first place. And she's saying too that everyone might not be happy about a human being here after killing one of their own, but they're all hopeful she'll break the curse, so they reluctantly understand.
Tamlin says, quote, "Leave if you want. I'm not your jailer. The gates are open. You can live anywhere in Prythian." Be careful what you wish for, Timitam. After both of their traumas under the mountain, Tamlin will become a sort of, if not a full-blown jailer to Fae-vorite, which will prompt her to go live anywhere in Prythian, aka the Night Court. I did not realize how many jail and like locking her here. Like there's so much foreshadowing in this book, and I didn't realize it until this deep dive.
But like she is kind of jailed here too. Like he's saying that she's not, but like she's a human who has been brought here, and like she doesn't feel like she can go anywhere else. Like she has to stay here. Fae-vorite notes that she hasn't had food this good in years. Even the meals she had when they were wealthy were little more than ashes compared to Prythian food. And then in Valaris, the food will be even better. When Fae-vorite becomes Fae, mortal food really will taste like ash to her, and she can literally barely eat it. Like she can't.
You know why this food tastes so good, Lexi?
Because they use the proper amount of spices, Nicole.
Because they use spices. Fae-vorite ensnares Alice. This will not be the first trap that Fae-vorite sets. She will trap the Suriel next episode. I cannot wait to talk about it. She will also trap Tamlin later this book when they're in flirting territory. We also get our first Cauldron mention from Alice here. It's in a curse, yes, but boy oh boy, gear up, friends, because this Cauldron is about to dominate our story. Also, as Fae-vorite is walking around the estate, she mentions how odd it is that she doesn't hear or see anyone. Well, because there are fairies taking care of the estate, but right now, because of the glamour Fae-vorite is under, she cannot see them. Fae-vorite also mentions to Tamlin, who is questioning her about where she is going, how, quote, she didn't realize she was under house arrest, to which he states that she is not. Again, it's everywhere.
Yeah, it is everywhere. Shocked. But again, that brings up the question of, do you think she kind of is here though? Like, what if she did try to go live somewhere else? He would stop her. Like he would. He already kind of did with the Puka when she was going to, and obviously she thought that was going back to the mortal lands. Obviously, it's not for the same reasons as later, of course, but it is still very dangerous beyond the manor, and he kind of needs her. So yeah, she is kind of under house arrest in so many ways here.
Yeah, he's lying through his teeth right now. This is the foundation to a great relationship.
I don't think that he knows that he's lying here. I think that he is saying all of this because he does believe it. But then, of course, if she actually goes and tries to do it, he's like, wait, no. Like, again, like that's like indecisiveness, and like his whole stream of conscious is just doesn't add up always.
Tamlin says, quote, "The wall is an inconvenience. If we cared to, we could shatter it and march through to kill you all." Great. Is your name Hybern, sir? Because that is exactly what Hybern's plans are. And while he does get as far as taking down the wall, he luckily does not do the full-blown march into the human lands and kill all the humans. Tamlin is talking about how his lands are mostly empty because many, many people have left. Well, Timitam, your court will be quite literally empty or emptier as we get into A Court of Frost and Starlight and beyond. And we will discuss that at length because Lexi and I have two very differing opinions on that whole situation.
Fae-vorite wonders if any of the High Fae would bother warning the humans of the Blythe. And she quickly follows up with, "It didn't take me long to know the answer." You know who does want to warn the humans? The Night Court, our beloved Inner Circle. And then Fae-vorite, she is imagining that maybe it is still possible for her wild, small dream to still come to pass with enough time to maybe paint a little or to maybe learn what she wants. It could still happen in a faraway land, perhaps, if she ever gets out of this bargain. Yes, Fae, darling, this dream comes true bigger and better in a faraway land than you ever could have imagined. And there's that bargain language. And once when she gets out of this bargain, or more like she's bound to Tamlin, and it's another bargain with Rhysand that actually helps her get out of Tamlin's tight grasp.
I love it so much. I can't wait. When Fae-vorite is at the stables looking for Lucian, she looks at the horse masks on the stable boys and thinks, quote, "I felt a shred of pity at what the Blight had done. The ridiculous masks they now had to wear until someone could figure out how to undo the magic binding them to their faces. It be you, Fae-vorite!" Fae-vorite says to Lucian that she guesses that if she was, quote, "one of you," she'd be one of the lesser fairies rather than a high fae. Well, you will become one of them, and a high Fae, high Lady Fae at that.
Lucian mentions that he's honored that Feyre thinks he has sway over Tamlin. We will see in the beginning of Mist and Fury just how much Lucian does not have any sway over Tamlin. When Lucian tries, the few times that he does, to talk back to Tamlin and stand up for Feyre, Tamlin shoots him down instantly and Lucian listens. He has to because, again, he is under Tamlin's employment. Again, this perfectly sets us up for the uniqueness of the inner circle of the Night Court, specifically Amren, who regularly does talk back to Rhysand.
Yeah, she does. Feyre asks if Lucian is old enough to have fought in the war, and he says, "Shit, Feyre, I'm not that old." Enter Bat Boys, who are indeed that old. Lucian mentions that no one but Tamlin can kill the bogey, setting us up to learn that he is indeed one of these incredibly powerful High Lords. And even later, Feyre thinks, quote, "If Tamlin was that powerful, then the High Lords of Prythian must be near gods." Feyre, use your brain. He is a High Lord. Use your brain.
I can understand how she doesn't put two and two together. It is incomprehensible that he is the High Lord because they are that much on a pedestal to her. He came to her house in the human lands.
House call.
House call. Tamlin briefly explains that running these lands was not supposed to fall to him, and we learn a lot more about his tangled history later. He had brothers, but he was the chosen one with the extra special powers. Don't worry, it'll be a future Suriel segment. And his father was killed unexpectedly, leaving the Spring Court to a reluctant Tamlin. Feyre thinks to herself that she doesn't want to be caught up in some brutal war or revolution because she doubts that she'd survive very long. Well, that's both true and not true. True in that, yes, you will get caught up in all of this and not last more than 3 months, but you'll also come back and survive the whole damn thing.
Poor Feyre. And now, every episode, Lexi is going to sip some tea with a Suriel and walk us through a world-building topic to better help us understand this world and the people in it. Lexi, it's time for me to ensnare you. Tell us what we're talking about today.
Today's Suriel segment is dedicated to the Creatures of Prythian. We meet several in this stretch of chapters, and we will be introduced to many more throughout the series. I will note that today's discussion does not include creatures in the prison or restricted to the middle. Those will have their own Suriel segments in way later episodes. We're also not discussing different species of fairies who live among or within the jurisdiction of the Fae, like the Illyrians or even the Water Wraiths. Let's start this off on a positive note and discuss the creatures that don't kill you on sight. The Suriel itself. Well, it doesn't kill Feyre on sight at least, and we love and cherish it. The Suriel is a wicked creature older than, quote, the bones of this world. While rare, there are multiple Suriel throughout the lands, and they are very difficult and dangerous to catch. It doesn't belong to one court and instead roams all the lands. Its face is described to be crafted of dried, weather-worn bone with a lipless mouth and long teeth and black gums. It's got slitted holes for nostrils and milky white eyes. Its voice is described, I love this description, as one in many, old and young, beautiful and grotesque. The Suriel also claims that it can smell when it's being lied to. The Suriel has the ability to answer any question truthfully. It comes off as this all-knowing creature with, a few caveats. Basically, the Suriel is the Google of Prythian. If it's ensnared, it will give its captor any information asked of it. How do you ensnare a Suriel, you ask? Well, you can lure it with a freshly slaughtered chicken so it won't notice your double-looped snare, or you can make things a whole lot easier on yourself and offer it a new cloak. It'll like you a whole lot more rather than the slaughtered chicken. Also, fun fact, if you have to run away from a Suriel, they won't cross running water. So good to note if you have to run away. All right, moving on here to the next creature, Will of the Wisps. These are spirits of air and light that appear on the grounds of the Spring Court, specifically during every summer solstice to celebrate the official start of summer. They are lovely shimmering shapes like moonlight that float around. They sing and dance and are just lovely. All right, next creature, Pegasus's Jelly Jubilee in the flesh. One of the best fantasy creatures of all time, in my humble opinion. I love horses. I love winged creatures. I love Pegasuses. They are winged horses and are considered very, very rare in this world. The High Lord of the Date Court, Helion, owns the only Pegasuses left in existence. Legend says that Pegasuses originated from the island the prison now sits on. And they have been dwindling in numbers over the centuries because their homeland vanished and whatever sustained them doesn't exist anymore. All right, right, well, that was a short list of non-lethal creatures in Prythian. Now, let's talk about the scary monsters that you don't want to mess with. All right, first up, we have the bogey, which is a very interesting creature because it is not considered real until you look at it. Once you acknowledge its existence by looking at it, it materializes and kills you. It tries to make you acknowledge it by talking to you in your head, taunting you, urging you to look at it. Look at it! The bogey can't be hunted or killed unless you're a high lord like Timidam, who can indeed kill it with their heightened strength and magic. The bogey's bite is crafted to slow the healing of high fae long enough to kill them, and the bogey was fathered by Lanthus, which is one of the first gods. Now we have the puka, which sounds a lot cuter than it is. It belongs to the wind and weather and everything that changes. They are shape-shifting tricksters that take the form of your desires in order to lure you to some remote place and slowly eat you. However, they're actually pretty cowardly if you really think about it. Tamlin easily scares one away, and they normally wouldn't have the balls to come close to the manor. Next, we have the Martax, which travel in packs and are extremely vicious. They're also known to travel into the mortal lands. Not long before our story begins, a pack of them raided a nearby village and tore half the village apart. They have a body as big as a bear's with a head like a lion's. Oh my god, is that you, Tamlin? And 3 rows of teeth sharper than a shark's. Quick side note, how does Farah know about a shark? I guess like she learned about it when she was younger and wealthy and all of that, but I just had that question. Anyway, they like to shred their victims to pieces, leaving them in ribbons. I would definitely not want to come across one of these. Another fairy I would definitely not want to come across is the Naga, which is made of shadow and hate and rot, and they enjoy torturing and eating mortals. It's believed that these are another nightmare kind of fairies the mortals hear stories about. Naga are described to be a humanoid, but with serpentine features and covered in dark scales. They have huge almond-shaped eyes, silvery forked tongues, razor-sharp teeth, and black flesh-shredding talons. They also, kind of random note here, they believe in the Dark Mother, which we'll assume is the evil counterpart of the Mother. We now have a creature that we are unfortunately very familiar with, and Claire Better is too, the Adder. This is one creature that is in the service of Amarantha, but I still needed to include him here because he is an evil fairy that we learn a lot about in this book and is considered, for all points and purposes, a creature. The Adder are very tall, skeletally thin gray creatures with bat ears, giant leathery wings, yes it can fly, clawed hands, and sharp silver fangs. It has a voice like shifting sand, low and disembodied. And as Claire unfortunately knows, the Adder loves to torture.
All I see when I think of the Adder is Bartok from Anastasia, the little bat. like in the dark of the night, da 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 da. That's all I see is Bartok.
But he's just so cute.
It's so confusing.
Oh my gosh. God. And now we have the Middengard worm. As you can guess, it's a gigantic worm-like monster. Technically, this worm is a type of dragon, but without any legs. We are so not going there right now. It's definitely also not the Alaskan bullworm from SpongeBob, which, yes, it is in canon. But anyway.
The Alaskan bullworm!
No. The Middengard worm is a giant pinkish brown worm with its front end ending in an enormous mouth filled with ring after ring of razor-sharp teeth. Okay, maybe it does sound the Alaskan bullworm.
The Alaskan bullworm!
It just with more teeth, and it's way meaner. And to my knowledge, it does not have eyes, which the Alaskan bullworm does have eyes. Yes, I absolutely did look up a side-by-side comparison. Also, this worm, it is blind and it relies on scent to see. And it has really, really smelly poop.
Thank you for that.
The facts we need to know. All right, now we have Bryaxis, which I'm sorry if you ever listen to Binge Mode. Meraxes? Anyway, Bryaxis is a creature who is described to be a manifestation of nightmares residing in the pit of the library under the House of Wind in the Night Court. Someone locked Bryaxis in the pit long ago, but after Bryaxis helps with the war later on, it cannot be found. So now
which is
yes,
concerning.
It is. Yes, they do have somewhat bigger problems, but yes, it is definitely concerning. So be on the lookout for Bryaxis. Last creature here to note, who again we will be getting into much more in later episodes, is Ramiel's beasts. They are creatures crafted of nightmares. They're described to be part cat and part serpent, all black fur, and sharp claws with hooked teeth. And that are the creatures of Prythian.
And that's not even all of them.
No, and that's minus the ones in the middle, which I'm so excited to talk about those ones, as well as the ones that are in the prison, which also we will talk about later.
Now it is time to move on to our favorite moments. I love that Feyre thinks that the masks are some absurd high fae fashion. I said this during the Inner Circle Debrief, but they are literally like the Stanley or the Lululemon crossbody bag.
That's better. Yeah, the Lulu cross.
It's like all I can think about when I think of the masks in Prythian.
I'm more of a Yeti girl myself, but to each their own.
I am more of whatever this is with all my stickers.
That's a Costco one right there. Costco. We're influencers, we promise.
I feel like I'm the least qualified to do this job ever.
Feyre can't decide whether Tamlin is her captor or savior. It really would be an internal dilemma, and it reminds me of the onset of Stockholm Syndrome.
Which shouts to our ACOTAR playlist, there is a song called Stockholm Syndrome.
Is there really? I didn't know.
There is, yes. When Alice is bathing Feyre, they pluck her like a chicken being prepared for dinner. I feel this on a spiritual level.
It reminds me of all the waxing I had to get done before my wedding.
Yep.
Yep.
That is not something I enjoyed doing.
I said it last episode and I will say it again. I love how being in Feyre's POV, we see how she views the world. There's a, quote, useless part of her mind that admired lovely and strange and colorful things. The key is Feyre does like nice things. I'm not saying extravagant, but she likes elegance. However, she needed to bury that deep, deep down during their years of poverty. And the series is really that side of her kind of coming to life and her being able to enjoy it. And it's really fun to see.
Lucian has come out to play. He says, quote, "I told you so, Tamlin. Your skills with females have definitely become rusty in recent decades." I love him just being such an asshole. How are him and Elaine mates? I don't understand. When Feyre leaves the dining room the first time, Lucian bursts out laughing at Tamlin. My headcanon is that he 100% was laughing at Tamlin's piss-poor attempt at flirting.
Oh,
and
definitely.
It's such a bromance, and I love that for them, and I hate it knowing where it goes in this series.
The way that a small part of Feyre misses the warmth of her sister's bodies overlapping with hers, I can absolutely imagine how big and lonely her new bed must feel. When your husband is out of town and your bed feels so empty, it's like that, but times 10 because, this is a bit of a more permanent situation, or at least it's supposed to be. Because I think about how when these three sisters snuggled in bed together in ACOTAR after Feyre successfully rescues Elaine, and my heart, it's just such a nice little callback. And then for me too, I can relate to this because a few months ago when my husband was out of town and had a life-threatening emergency, Nicole dropped everything and came over to spend the night with me so I wouldn't feel so alone and empty in our bed on that very long night.
We snuggled hard, and I scared the shit out of your son when he woke up the next morning. I will do that any day for you. I love you.
Thank you. I love you so much. And my husband is fine now, by the way.
Oh, yeah, we should probably say.
He's fine.
Jake's good. Now, Tamlin flirting. Quote, "He bared all of his teeth in what I supposed was an attempt at a smile." All I can think of is that moment in Beauty and the Beast where the Beast just goes and it's like he's trying to smile, but it's like it's A for effort. It's A for effort.
B effort.
B for man, bear, pig.
When Feyre and Lucian are out on their hunt, she notices the seemingly useless beauty of their surroundings, and instead she makes herself focus on more useful things for survival, like the thick brush beyond a flowering lilac that would be a good spot for hiding. I just love this character building for her as an artist trapped in a survivor's life. When Lucian says, "I admire your balls, Feyre," I really do. Have I mentioned how much I love Lucian? Feyre's got some giant hanging balls. And I'm sorry. That joke was from Fourth Wing coverage, and it didn't quite translate like I wanted to.
If you haven't read Fourth Wing, there's your tease to do so. Lucian says to Feyre, quote, "Do you ever stop being so serious and dull?" To which she says, "Do you ever stop being such a prick?" And Lucian grins. Much better.
I'm thinking more and more that maybe a big reason Lucian was verbally poking Feyre was to break her out of her shell, make her fight back a little, breathe some fire into her because he knows it's there if she killed Andrés, but she's so reserved. So he's egging her on to pull her out of the stupor. Kind of sounds like Dad. How he verbally pokes us.
Oh my God, is Dad Lucian?
Oh God, don't say that. Lucian says to Feyre that the High Fae are too powerful and too bored with immortality to be checked by anything besides a firm hand. It makes you really think about these immortal lives and how long they've all known each other, the lives over the centuries that they must live.
When Feyre and Tamlin are walking to the study, he asks her if she's ever going to use the knife she stole from dinner. And when she asks, "How did you know?" he says, quote, "I was trained to notice those things, but I could smell the fear on you more than anything." I love how the Fae can smell the shifts in people's emotions. And this is just our first glimpse into that. And boy, oh boy, just SJM use it in a delicious way later in this series. And that is the end of our sole ACOTAR coverage for the day. We do have a very small Maas vs. Madness section, and I do want to go ahead and just say nothing that we're covering in the Maas vs. Madness is plot spoiler. In fact, actually both are very, very early on in both Crescent City and Throne of Glass. So if you have not read those series, but you don't mind hearing non-plot spoilers, this is a totally fine Maas vs. Madness for you to listen to. But just in case you are wanting to go into those books totally blind, here are a few reminders before you sign off for this episode.
Next episode, we will be covering chapters 13 through 18, and please give us a follow on Instagram and TikTok at Fantasy Fangirls Pod.
Also, please rate and review the podcast. It's so incredibly helpful, especially as we shift into a new series. It's like the best hug you can give your favorite podcast. Always rate and review, friends. If you're watching on YouTube, you can hit that like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. And of course, the best thing you can do for this podcast is to share it with your fellow ACOTAR friends. If you are wanting to be the host of Claw Watch with them, this is a great episode for you to start the count. I lost count how many times we did Claw Watch.
No, we're not. There's too many to count.
There's too many to count. But you and your friends can do the Claw Watch and let us know how many claw counts we have. Now let's move into our Maas vs. Madness section. First one is, as Feyre is walking around looking for Lucian, she feels like two someones are watching her. Quote, "A faint sniff and a quiet giggle issued from far too close. The shimmering in the corner of my eye grew larger, separating into two small figures no taller than my waist. Some people believe that these are the little folk or fairies from the Throne of Glass world, who are the smaller cousins to the human-like Fae. While their forms do vary, there are very specific ones who regularly watch Selena in the forest when she is on her way to the Glass Castle, and even leave her gifts later on in the series. It's not a direct one-to-one comparison, however, they are described as full of mischief in Tog, and curious and wanting to play in ACOTAR. So it is possible that these are two different types of species, but it's fun to think that they are the same ones, just in different universes.
Also, Tamlin inquires to Feyre, "Do you speak to mercenaries often?" After last episode, a lot of people pointed out to us that the mercenary is a similar description to Fury ACOTAR from Crescent City. This is not the only mention to someone who could be Fury as we get into the ACOTAR books, but we are saving a big deep dive on Fury's potential presence in this world for a later episode. So yes, we are aware, and please stay tuned.
And folks, that is it for episode 2. If you're a part of our newsletter, you saw a trivia question at the end of that newsletter. And if you're not part of our newsletter, link to join is in the description. The question was, what kind of fairy is Alice? Lexi, what's the answer?
Alice is an Urisk. If you got that, gold star for you. Woohoo! And we will have our next trivia question in our March newsletter. And like we mentioned earlier, episode 3 will be covering chapters 13 through 18.
Time to have tea with the Suriel. I cannot wait. Thank you as always to our executive producer, Hayden, aka our sanity manager. We truly don't know what we would do without you, good sir.
And if you're interested in joining the Patreon party, go to the link in the show notes or YouTube caption, or just go ahead and visit patreon.com/fantasyfangirls and check it out. Also, if you're not following us on Instagram and TikTok, what are you doing? Give us a follow at Fantasy Fangirls Pod. We have so much more content on social media.
Also, do not forget to rate and review the podcast. It is, like I said earlier, it is one of the best things you can do for the show, especially as we transition into a new series. It's so exciting, and it takes like 2 seconds. 2 seconds of your life. You can do it to help a friend. Also, if you are watching on YouTube, please take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel, and that way you never miss an episode. But first and foremost, and most importantly, please share this with your fellow ACOTAR friends. We love how much the podcast has grown, and that's because you all have done this times a million. And just, if you have already done this, thank you, thank you, thank you. If you have more friends, continue sharing.
All right, friends, thank you so much. We love you. We will see you next week.
Bye. What? Spit. Hold on.
Oh, you guys so far.
What did I write here? Hold on. I swear I edited this. What? That.
Freak Feyre out. Oh my gosh. Freak Feyre out.
Feyre out.
This is hard for a reason. Feyre.
When it cried in book 3.
When it cried in book 3.
When it died. Maybe you cried when it died. We don't know. My hair is doing.
It is like a lion.
It is.
Lioness today.
A golden man bear pig today. Maybe so that.
Maybe. Like it was staged. Maybe.
One more time. Staged fight in the dining.
Staged this fight.
This fight. Maybe. Fire
Thing keeps going off.
No, your fire alarm?
The fire alarm keeps chirping at me, but like only every now and then.
Can I actually do that one more time? I'm so
Yes.
sorry. Tamlin. When Alice is bathing, Feyre. What? When Feyre was bathing.
The ladies are getting in the bath together, and this story is about to take a whole new turn.
Remember when Mrs. Pot and Belle fucked? Yeah, me neither.